Hello, friend. I'm talking to you today about the oil industry in the United States and the different directions the two political parties are leading us. I wish to illustrate this by showing you some things, some back and forths from the debates and from other sources. And then I'd like to show you ultimately my conclusion that I came to in the matter. And so let's begin. Uh, I'm happy that we can have this conversation outside of the context of the political craziness.
Never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is, he's flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking.
Okay. So he said he will not stop the fracking. He will not stop fracking. And Trump said that he'd made claims that he would stop fracking. And so I went and I pursued Trump, the video that he posted, and here's that clip.
Any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel. No new fracking.
And I gradually move away from fracking.
And I think it's critically important on day one that we end any fossil fuel leases on public lands.
But what about, say, stopping fracking and stopping pipeline infrastructure?
Exactly. They want to do the same thing I want to do. They want to phase out fossil fuels, and we're going to phase out fossil fuels.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
So that breakdown shows you a lot of media clips where Biden and Kamala stated multiple times, not the exact statement, I will ban fracking, but with the sentiment that any movement away from fossil fuels to any kind of other energy is good. And this small conception or change in phrasing allows for Biden to say, I will not ban fracking, and then in this first 60 days put a moratorium or a ban on any new oil or gas operations. So he says, I will not ban fracking. I will promote growth in other areas of energy production, but I will not ban fracking. And then he comes out and says, we're going to put a halt on fracking. We're going to shut down the Dakotas Access Pipeline. We're going to shut down the Keystone Pipeline. And he's saying that he's doing this to get Americans off of oil. That's the goal. And by putting these pipelines in place, we are enabling long-term reliance on them. Here's a study on pipelines, rails, and trucks, and looking at the intricacies and the details of which method might be best, and it's not a clear-cut answer. Trucks, this is the primary mode that we will be using in the United States without the pipeline usage. By rail, this would be the second most way we use it, and still a significant amount by rail in the United States. And then pipeline, which is growing, but not quickly, as they've been all shut down and been looked to other methods to shipping oil. But just because pipelines are the cheapest, there is other variables that that need to be taken into account, like time it takes to send oil by rail. It is much faster to send oil through your system, because you're just, by truck going 60 miles an hour rather than a liquid going through a pipe. And then safety comparisons. On average, these are all very low. 10 people die in the U.S. by trucks sending oil, 2 by rail, pretty much 2 by pipeline. Relatively insignificant, but it is a bit safer to send it by pipeline and rails. The last thing, this is by spillage. Rail is actually the best way to send it as far as you spill the least amount. Trucks spill the most amount, with pipelines slightly behind on average. So overall, it shows you that trucks spill the most and are the most expensive, saying that they are likely the worst way to send oil due to the environmental impacts. But yet it's the exact method that is going to grow due to the Biden administration's policies, resulting in skyrocketing gas prices. So all of this comes together in a way that puts it like this. Americans' everyday lives are made better by the consumption of oil. The cost of this consumption means that Americans have a reliance on oil. This limited resource has led to conflict in the past to sustain the country's needs. Under the Trump administration, America became energy independent. This meant that foreign governments would struggle using gas and oil as a bargaining chip against the United States. This resulted in lower gas prices for Americans. Trump wished to make oil cheaper so that Americans could spend their money on other things that they needed, as well as he wished to enable the country as a whole to have access to all the energy that it would need without having to rely on other countries. Americans' everyday lives will be made harder by the reduction of fossil fuel usage. Groceries will cost more. Your cars will cost more. Your homes will cost more to keep warm. And you're not going to be making any more money due to these policies. Companies will begin to experiment with other ways of shipping because of these increases in prices, and that's the goal. But it's only going to come at the cost of the American consumer. It's not going to come at the cost of these big companies because we have to pay it right now because we're relying on it. This is why I believe is at the root of the movement responsible for stopping pipelines, preventing fracking, and for fighting climate change. They would believe this would be a belief that all movement away from fossil fuels is good, despite the loss of jobs, the inability for people to pay for gas, and the increase in the cost of living. All of these things are righteous sacrifices that they're making for the middle class. The middle class is not making this decision for themselves. They feel as if it is forced upon it. And this is why people who oppose the Democratic parties attempt to end the oil industry. The people who are for growth in oil industry get angry because they're feeling attacked on an individual level. Their lives are being harder while they're being scolded for saying, "Why are you making my life harder?" The real solution to this problem rests in technology developing to a point where it is silly to seek oil, as the other options are far greater in abundance and far cheaper in cost. And so that's what we need. And we disagree vehemently on how to get there, because the general conservative mindset is let the free markets develop a solution that's better to oil, and the left wing's environmentalist says restrict it all, bite the bullet, increase the suffering in the country for the overall greater good of not potentially damaging the planet. So this is me summing up the argument in full. It's pretty radical to me that many people who would argue for big oil are being labeled as science deniers and as even racist for making these claims that oil is not a bad thing for Americans right now. And it's just pretty crazy that we're not able to understand these complex issues in a real way. So that's where I'm at, my friend. I thank you for being genuine in how you approach interacting with this video, because there are crazy, crazy people who, if they get wind of this, they'll be writing their extreme opinions. So until next time, friend, bye-bye.